wanted to speak about Lag BaOmer in the context of a very important medical ethics question that I think I haven't seen that anyone mentioned this source, this relevant to really the question. If I could say it's the question that we're dealing with today. So I would like to read a Gemara together, the famous Gemara about Lag BaOmer, Shem Bar Yochai. You see my virtual background. You see that's Rabbi Shimon, that's the Ma'ara in Miron. And I want to talk about the Gemara from a different angle, but I think that's clearly what's going on. And maybe we'll use Lag BaOmer as an impetus to speak about a very important medical ethics question. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen. And so the handouts, communal needs versus individual freedom. I'm going to pin myself, because I like to see myself, if you don't mind. Says the Gemara. So the Gemara says, now, I'm going to skip the point. Okay, we'll get to the Gemara. The Gemara says there was a person who was called Rosh HaMedabim, the head speaker. So the Gemara says, what's the story? Why was he called the head speaker? So the Gemara says there was a story. 3 people, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, and Shimon Bar Yochai, were sitting in a room. And there was another person, Yehuda, some convert, was sitting there. The fourth person is relevant, you'll see in a second. So the 3 rabbis, Rabbi Yehuda said, how pleasant are the actions of this nation, meaning the Romans who had conquered Israel. They established marketplaces, established bridges, and established bathhouses. So, right, they've set up a beautiful communal structure, infrastructure, society. Life is, again, it's bad that they conquered Israel and destroyed the temple, but it's a great, they've really done a wonderful job in setting up society and community. For those of you who have had a chance, obviously, to visit Israel, you've seen all of their infrastructure. This is a cardo. This is a marketplace. There's one famous one in Jerusalem in the Old City, but this is one in Bet Shan. You can tell it by the columns. This is a bathhouse in Bet Shan. And this, for those of you, I'm not going to test anybody, does anybody know what this is how the bathhouse looked underneath? This was underneath the floor. They poured the boiling water underneath the floor, and then it percolated up. Does anybody know where this is? Where that bathhouse is?
Is that Masada?
Very good. Excellent. That's at Masada, right? So these are pictures.
That was this guy. It was this guy.
Okay. Who was it?
Elon.
Good job. So that's Masada. And this one, of course, everyone knows is that's Caesarea. That is the Roman aqueduct that you can still see if you go to the beach in Caesarea. So all those are Roman-influenced buildings. Bet Shan was a Roman city. Caesarea was a Roman city. And here you see them. I personally believe that the Gemara, when it mentions marketplaces, that's a cardo. Bathhouses are we saw. And bridges, I think the Gemara doesn't mean bridges. In Israel, you don't need bridges because you don't really cross over. I mean, I guess streams. But I think it means the aqueducts, which are the bridges which bring the water to everyone. So Rabbi Yehuda went and praised their infrastructure. Rabbi Yossi was quiet. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said, it's all worth nothing. Everything they established for their own purposes. Marketplaces, prostitutes. Bathhouses, pamper themselves. Bridges, taxes. And then what happened was, the story that's relevant does it. Yehuda heard it, told people, who then told it. It got to the Romans. The Romans got angry. Rabbi Yehuda said, Yehuda, who praised the Romans, will be elevated. Yossi will be exiled, and Shimon will be killed. And that's why he ran away to the cave. My simple question is, what are they arguing about? I mean, the truth is they're both right. They're not wrong. The Romans definitely did an unbelievable building and infrastructure and helped society. Of course, they had ulterior motives. Everyone has ulterior motives. Like, what's the argument about? So in theory, and this is how it's taught, I think, generally, is that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai he was like what we call someone who's like, 100% truth, MS, truthful. You can't veer, right about it. It's got to be 100% pure. No, you can't have a little, anything. It's got to be perfectly straight. And that's the end of the story. The end of the story says they came out of the cave. Shimon Bar Yochai looks around and sees good people, lovely, fine people. What are they doing? They're plowing, they're sowing. He says they're abandoning Torah life. And he looked at them and they burnt up. Then God rebuked him and said, God said, did you emerge from the cave to destroy my world? Go back in the cave. He came for another 12 months and now altogether 13 years. They come out and Rabbi Elazar the son would still kill the people with his eyes. Rabbi Shimon would heal them. He said, you know what? The world is enough. Me and you will be the people who will be pure. Everyone else will be regular people. And so the simple reading is, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is someone who says, you know what? I don't care about this world. I'm an otherworldly person. I spent 13 years in a cave, and I don't have any, need for this world. And that, by the way, is a simple reading because of the Gemara in Brachos talks about should you work and learn Torah or should you just learn Torah? Famous is that Shmuel says everyone should work and learn Torah. Shmuel says just learn Torah. That's the famous Gemara in Brachos. It says if you plow and then you sow and you harvest and you thresh, you'll never learn Torah. You have to learn Torah, and other people will do your work for you. And the Gemara is, and that's so. And again, the Gemara ends off. It says many people try to do that and were not successful because it's very hard to be pure in this world. It's very hard to be only Torah, only God. Not working, not doing anything. So that really is not a way. That's his way. Great. Okay, so that's how everyone seemingly learns. But there's a problem with that. I want to read you the end of the Gemara. I think most people like to skip over it, forget about it. He says, since a miracle transpired for me, I will go and repair something for the sake of others. I'm going to learn from Jacob, from Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu, 22 years, was with his father-in-law. He was tricked. He was cheated on. He was, got the wrong wife. Everything horrible. Then he wouldn't give him his wages. He runs away from him after 20 years. Takes 2 years till he gets home. He arrives back in the land of Israel, Canaan, the city of Shechem, and he says, "I'm going to do something good for this city." And the Talmud has 3 opinions what he did. Rav said Yaakov established currency, money. Shmuel said he established marketplaces, and Rabbi Yochanan said he established bathhouses. And you'll notice that this is the end of the Gemara, and the beginning of the Gemara said, if you're back on top, it said marketplaces, bridges, and bathhouses. Bridges was a way to collect money. So Rabbi Yehuda, which said how great the Romans are, in reality, Rabbi Shimon now realized, this is a very important point, Shimon now realized that Rabbi Yehuda is right. Yaakov, our father, Yaakov Avinu, the first thing he did when he came back to the land of Canaan after 22 years of pain and suffering, and he comes back, the first thing he did was established the same 3 things that the Romans did. So the question is, what is the Gemara talking about? It's very clear that there's the side part of the Gemara is the cave behind me. Well, not the cave behind, that's where he died, but the cave where Rabbi Shimon, that's a side story. He had to run away, miracles, etc. But the arc of the Gemara is clear that the issue is, what do you do and how do you approach communal infrastructure? Now, why do I bring that up? Why is that so relevant? And why is that the topic of Lag BaOmer? We are living right now through obviously historical time. I spoke about that last 2 weeks ago. We are living through a question, a medical ethics question, an ethical societal question that almost never gets brought up. And that question is, are the needs of the community greater than the needs of the individual, even to the point where people have to die? Now, normally you would say, Rabbi Fogel, please don't even say such things, don't even mention those words. We place the primacy of life above everything. We don't endanger lives. We're all sitting in our houses, as you could, we're all sitting at home. We're all not going out. Everything we're doing now is to preserve lives. And I say you're 100% correct. Of course, everything in the Torah seems to indicate please place the preservation of life above everything else. Except there are one thing that's even more important than saving lives. And you look at me and said, prove it. And I'm going to do that right now. I think we've touched upon this in the past. I don't remember. but I think we did this a while ago. We'll do it again. But we're going to do two sources, maybe three sources, that seem to indicate that there is something more important than saving individual lives. Okay, you ready? Join with me, please, as we start the Gemara. The Mishnah in Gittin says, captives are not redeemed for more than their monetary value, for the betterment of the world. The rabbi said, again, it's a rabbinic edict, that we don't redeem captives because, again, if it's cost us too much money, because that is better for the world. Tikkun olam. That's, by the way, for those of you who've heard the phrase Tikkun olam, this is where it comes from. The Mishnah, and getting many Mishnahs here, it says a few times, betterment of the world, that Tikkun olam, that's where its sources, that there's a lot of enactments that were done in rabbinic times. Tikkun olam, fixing the world. So here it is, we don't redeem the individual captive if they ask for too much money. So now the Talmud asks, what does it mean for the betterment of the world? Is it due to the financial pressure of the community? Meaning, if it's too much money for the community, they don't have the money. Or is it because of that they will not seize to bring additional captives? Is it because if we let them start, if we pay ransom, then it'll keep going on. They'll keep kidnapping. We'll keep paying ransom, and it's just not going to work. And the Gemara says, Levi redeemed his own daughter, so maybe that proves that a community shouldn't pay, but an individual can. The Gemara says, no. Abai says, who said he acted in accordance with the sages? He acted against the wishes. So that means, if you read the Gemara carefully, it says that even if there is money, even if right now you can pay for this captive to be released, you may not. You have the money, the community, the individual has the money, but for the betterment of society, to make sure that society works good and well in the future, you have to leave him as a captive, even though you have the money now. Now, being in captivity is a horrible thing. The Gemara in Bava Basra says, redeeming captives is a great mitzvah. Why? Because the verse says in Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu, that for death and the sword and famine and for captivity. And the Gemara says captivity is worse than death, than sword, than famine. So being in captivity is the worst thing you could do to a person. And even so, when we have the money to redeem them, we're not lacking the funds, we're able to, we say don't do it. The community's needs are more important than his life. Let him die in captivity, because if we redeem him, it's going to be worse for the community in the future. That's a crazy statement. I had heard, I haven't seen this in print, but someone told me that Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, the head of the Muslim movement, when he read this Gemara and grasped what the words are saying, he started crying. Because this is very cruel. For the good of society, we let people die. Today, by the way, is the 20th of ER. That means yesterday, Wednesday, is the 19th of ER. 19th of ER is the day that the most famous Jewish captive died. You're all aware that this is the ancient Jewish cemetery in the city of Worms. That's Worms. These two graves here, the one with the papers on it, are the Maram of Rutenberg, Meir Bar of Baruch. And if you zoom in, which I will try right now to do, if you zoom in, right there, it says Yud Tes B'Iyar. He died in the year 1293. So that means 727 years ago yesterday. Rabbi Meir Bar of Baruch, the Maram of Rutenberg, was captured, held in, and he refused to let his students redeem him, both when he was alive and then when he was dead. They also didn't, until one person, Alexander Ziskin, he gave his own money and he's buried next to him. That's over here. So this is the Maram and this is Alexander Ziskin, and people go pray there today. That's why you see on top there are papers and other things. So that, if you go to Worms today, you'll see that. And that is the most famous Jewish captive who died in captivity. And he was the leading Torah scholar of the generation. In fact, we know that one of the reasons that Ashkenazi Jewry declined was because of his captivity, and then his students all felt that they were next, so they all escaped to Spain, to Sephard, like the Rush, and that's how Ashkenazi Jewry, especially Ashkenazi rabbinic Jewry, declined for about 100 years after the 13th, 14th century. Okay, so you see, now, and listen to the Rambam, how Maimonides, how he puts the two together. The redemption of captives is the most important thing. It takes precedence over sustaining the poor and clothing them. You do not find the mitzvah greater than redeeming captives. It's even more important than the building of a synagogue. Yet, they may not redeem captives more than they're worth for the sake of civilization. So this law is the primary source that communal needs communal needs take precedence over individual lives, even to the point where they'll die. That's an unbelievable chiddush, an unbelievable new idea. Let's do the next source. Okay, this one is a little, so again, this one's a little bit more hard to grasp, but I'll show you that there are people who actually refuse to believe that that's what it says. The Gemara says, it's talking about, imagine the scenario, you have two towns, town A and town B. And there's a spring, meaning a source of water, that is found and belongs to city A. So if a spring belongs to the residents of a city, their water needs come first. The city's resident, okay, and now then therefore, if there's only enough water for one city, so the city which has a spring comes first, and therefore, and then they can tell the other city, sorry, you can't have it. Let's say there's enough water for everyone to drink, then the next need is for their animals. Again, the city that owns the water takes precedence of the other city to feed their animals. Laundry, again, our laundry needs takes precedence of your laundry needs. And this reminds us of the famous Gemara Bava Metzia, where we have two people in the desert. One is a thing of water, and he's allowed to keep it because you own the water and you stay alive. That's fine. That makes sense. The Gemara asks a very interesting ethical question. Let us say this spring of water located in town A has enough water for town A to drink and to do laundry. But if town A does laundry, there's nothing left over for town B, not even for them to drink. Or town A and town B can both drink, but then there won't be enough for the laundry needs of town A. So I think all of us instinctively would say, what does that mean? That means town A will keep all their water so they could do laundry and withhold water from town B, which now will maybe they'll die from the lack of water, from not having any drinking water. That can't be. That's what the Gemara says. The lives of others takes precedence over their own laundry. Okay, that makes a lot of sense to us. That lives are more important than laundry. So if there's only enough water to do for us to drink and them to drink, and then nothing left over for us to do laundry, so be it. Because again, their lives take precedence. Rabbi Yossi disagrees, and he says even their own laundry, because we own the water, town A, takes precedence over the lives of others. Now again, the unbolded words are the commentary in the English commentary. It's not in the actual words of the Gemara, because it says they say it poses danger. But you'll see that's a problem. The Gemara says, with regard to laundry, because it involves pain. So Rabbi Yossi says that I, town A, am allowed to withhold vital drinking water from town B because my town can't handle, it's too painful not to do laundry. That's crazy, right? That sounds pretty crazy, no? But if you put it in 2020 words, it's like saying our need to go to the bar is more important than everyone's safety. Our need to intermingle with other people is more important than the few old people who will die. That's what Rabbi Yossi is saying. Rabbi Yossi is saying that the community needs to function with water for their laundry. Otherwise, everyone's going to go crazy. And on the water, you can do that. But you know that you keeping the water will cause other people to die? I'm sorry, that's life or death. these two Gemaras are so harsh. You know, when the state of Israel was set up, the state of Israel was the first Jewish state or Jewish-run state in millennia. The Jews had not run a government and a state for quite some time, and they were new to this. So one of the questions was how to run a community, a state, a society based on Torah law. In other words, I'm not such a great Torah scholar, but even the great Torah scholars who lived in 1948 had a big problem. There were no sources. There were no books written for 2,000 years about how to do it because we haven't done it. None of the kings, David didn't leave a guidebook, how to run a Jewish society. So the rabbis of 1948, 1950 were really troubled by this. So So I have it at the end of the source sheet here. There was a rabbi named Shaul Yisraeli who kept putting out books called HaTorah v'Hamedina, the Torah and the state, right? And it was to try to clarify how to run a state. A Jewish state needs hospitals, it needs roads, it needs bathhouses, it needs water, it needs all those things. Well, how do you decide what a community needs? How do you weigh up the needs of the individual of society? So in that volume, the chief rabbi who at that time was Tel Aviv, but then he later second chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Unterman, he quotes this Gemara, and he says,
not the sound.
Sorry? Did I say something? No? Good? Okay. If anyone wants to say something, they can, but I'll just mute everyone just in case I hear people. You can unmute yourselves if you have something to say. The Rabbi Unterman writes, it can't be. It can't be. E.F. Shalomar, it's talking about really that town B is in danger. It just can't be, because how could you claim that your laundry needs are more important than other people's lives? And the truth is, what he was saying was exactly what we're all feeling. So you all saw that, I'm sure. I'm going to close my WhatsApp, if you don't mind. There we go. He's saying what we're all feeling. It can't be that you're going to tell me that a community needs to be normal and sane, and laundry is more important than other people's lives. It can't be. Yet, there are those who argue with him and said, that's exactly the point of the Gemara. Exactly the point of Rabbi Yossi, going back here, is that a community needs to be, needs what it needs. It needs to be normal. And if that causes individual lives, so be it. So you have two Gemaras now, two sources that seem to say that a community takes precedence over individual lives. Now listen to this this is from the Jerusalem Talmud, Talmud Yerushalmi. It's in two places, in Peah and in Shkolim. Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina and Rabbi Hoshi are walking in the synagogues of Lud. Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina, how much money did my ancestors put down to build these synagogues? In other words, he was looking for some praise. Now it's important to know that Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina's father was Rabbi Chanina Bar Chama, and he was the leading sage after Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. In fact, the Gemara Ksuvas tells us that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi appointed this man's father, meaning who built these synagogues, he appointed him as the leader after his death. And Rav Hoshea turned to him and says, how many souls did your ancestors put down here? Were there no people studying Torah who the money might not have been spent? Why do you build synagogues? Why do you build infrastructure projects? There are poor people right now suffering. There's a famous, I'm going to skip a second, there's a famous medrash in Vayikra Rabbah. Rabbi Shubal Levi says, when I went to Rome, I saw pillars of marble. And marble has a problem sometimes. It cracks depending if the temperature fluctuates. So they would cover the marble with blankets so they would not crack from the heat or freeze from the cold. And then I saw a poor person who was also cold outside, and he didn't have a blanket, he had a thin reed mat. And Rabbi Shubal Levi says, that sounds ridiculous. Why would you go, again, it's back to the Romans, why would you go ahead and spend all this money on infrastructure when there are human beings who are suffering? And that's exactly the debate here in the Jerusalem Talmud. One said, listen, we need synagogues. Every community needs communal structures. So I'm praising my father for building it. Hoshi said, but people died. People needed the money. People were suffering. You didn't care about them? And then Shulchan Aruch, that's actually, the other two Gemaras are not really codified. I mean, the captive one is, but again, we don't really have, hopefully, the reply, and the water one is not. There's an authority that holds that synagogue is more important than charity, but that maintaining poor boys in study of law and supporting sick poor people, which is a later addition, is more important than the maintenance of a synagogue. So here you see, again, this question. Some say there is an authority. The Shulchan Aruch does not rule unequivocally. It said there is an authority. There's two opinions. Meaning, does the communal need to build a synagogue more important than poor people studying or poor sick poor people? Or are they more important than the communal infrastructure? So again, I'm not the one to make communal decisions. I'm a simple person sitting in my house. I don't claim to be have any of the answers. But these three sources are clearly indicate that you are allowed to, and you might have to, put the needs of a community, not that the community is going to die, the community to be normal, the community to be healthy mentally, and you're allowed to pick that over the lives of individuals. Now, I'm not saying that applies today. Obviously, if we let the virus run rampant, it's not lives of individuals, lives of a community. And that obviously is more important than the mental health of the community. But if it would be just the whole community versus individual lives, that is a question that not only are you allowed to ask, you must ask. And many people say, oh, when it comes to lives, you have to shut your brains off, it's only about lives. And it's important to know that no, you are allowed to do that. Now, I think, and I can't prove this, but I think that's what's really going on in that first Gemara. I think it's obvious that Rabbi Yehuda, who praised the Romans, he knew quite well that the Romans were not the biggest pious people in the world. That they weren't like, all we do is we think of our poor and needy subjects, and we're not thinking of ourselves at all. He knew that wasn't true. And Shimon Bar Yochai knew very well that even though they had bad intentions, the community greatly benefited from there. So what was the debate? The debate was like this. Rabbi Yehuda says, the communal needs are so important. Don't worry about all the bad ramifications. Don't worry that there will be prostitutes. Don't worry about people will only become spoiled and pampered. Don't worry about the taxes. When there's a communal good, you're allowed to overlook the individual or the negatives that are there because of the communal good. Rabbi Shimon said, no. When there's a negative that comes out of it, communal good is not more important than the individual negative side effects. What happens? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai goes to the cave, he comes out. He first sees a regular person. He sees a regular person involved in this world, and he says, he burns him up. Why? Because every individual has to work their hardest. That's true. God says the world doesn't work that way. Go back. You can't destroy the world. The world has in it people who are not pure. The world has in it a society that runs, they want to be pampered, society that wants to take indulgences in this world. Go back to your cave until you realize that. He comes back, he still realizes, he says, the world needs pure people. That's me, that's you, my son. And then he says, you know what? I am going to look at Yaakov. Yaakov was the paradigm of the pure person. Yaakov is the man of truth. Yaakov is considered the complete man who sits in tents. And the first thing Yaakov did, and again, he didn't do it for his family. He did it for the neighboring idolaters who were eventually going to kidnap and rape his daughter. But when he came back, said the first thing we do is we make a better, we contribute to the community, to the society. You build a world. In a way, tikkun olam. The tikkun olam is you build a world. Are there bad things that have come out of it? Yes. Shechem, the city that Yaakov helped, turned out to be pretty bad to his family. And they got paid back, but that's because of what they did. But Yaakov went ahead and he marketplaces, bathhouses for his new neighbors, because that's what the community needs, even though Yaakov knew the bad things that will come out of it. And that was the lesson of Shimon Bar Yochai. So in theory, the story of Lag BaOmer is not just how Shimon Bar Yochai went to the cave and lived in God's miracles. It was that he actually realized at the end that the communal needs are more important than the individual purity in this world. So that's an unbelievable, if we're right in that understanding of the Gemara, and I think that's pretty clear that's the arc of the Gemara, that this Gemara of Lag BaOmer, which I haven't seen anyone quote, the Gemara in Gittin about redeeming captives, which the Yartan of the Maramah was yesterday, the Gemara Dharam about sharing water or keeping it for your own laundry needs, and the Yerushalmi about whether you should spend money on synagogues, communal infrastructure, or you should instead support the poor people or the sick people. I think all of these Gemaras need for those who are making communal decisions, and for all of us who think that communally. I think these are very important building blocks to formulating a proper a way of balancing communal needs and individual freedom. I thank you for joining me today, so I can speak this out. I'm open to any questions. I think it's a very delicate topic, because whenever you seem to be anti-life or pro letting people die, you have to be very careful, and you have to be very careful. But at the same time, we have to be honest that the communal needs are something to be reckoned with. Thank you for joining me. Any questions?
Thank you.
Stacey, go ahead.
I think it's interesting that with all of the Gemaras you mentioned, I think it's trying to teach us also that there is no one answer to the various questions that are going to come up during the course of history. At one time, yes, you're going to have an answer that says the needs of the community are totally overshadowed by the individual. At another time, you're going to find that no, sometimes the needs of one community are more than another. And another times, you're going to find the needs of an individual will overshadow. But I think it is teaching us that there is no one right answer. And when we're sitting down and trying to decide what's important for a community, whether it's a city, a town, a college, there's so many different things you have to add into the equation that the Gemara is telling us whatever answer you end up on, just make sure you're following these dictums, look at what's here, and then say afterwards, make your decision. Because at the end of the day, you can only do what you can do.
And again, Shoshana,
I
I think what you're saying is absolutely correct. And I wanted to give that. I think, thank you for saying that, because what you said is absolutely correct. That is why the Gemaras, almost all of them, have a debate without being settled, because there is no way to answer these questions. You can't give a rule. And again, that's what they try to do, and the state started, like, to make rules. But when it comes to these delicate issues, there are no rules. You can't write a Shulchan Aruch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But the problem is someone has to make that decision.
Yes. So we've got a guideline of them to sit down and
guidelines, and hopefully the people who are able to will, and the people who should and don't. Unfortunately,
exactly.
That's all I can say.
Exactly. The ones who should do and the ones who shouldn't do.